Well, good afternoon. Welcome to the School for Christian Faith and Leadership at the Diocese of Washington. I am the Reverend Emily Snowden, project coordinator for the school and your digital host for today. We're so glad that you are here. Today is another wonderful opportunity to learn from our missioner for revitalization and young adults, the Reverend Todd Thomas, and our friend Dr. Jordan Rippy, as they discuss faithful financial practices, one of the key signs of parish vitality. And we are so glad that you're here. We hope you enjoy your lunch as we commune together during this time. And now I'll turn it over to the Reverend Todd Thomas.
Thank you, Reverend Emily. And we were saying as we were waiting for people and as they were dropping in, really enjoying these lunch hours together. So thank you for giving your time and energy and your wisdom to this collective effort. We are super excited today to have a special guest with us. Dr. Jordan Rippy is on the accounting faculty at Johns Hopkins Carey Business School. Dr. Rippy is a great friend, has been a volunteer extraordinaire with Church House and with this diocese, and helped with a lot of projects up here and really endeared herself to us. And also a postulate for the priesthood with the Diocese of Alabama. So welcome, Dr. Rippy. Jordan, glad to have you with us today.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's great to have you. We're going to begin, as we always do, with a quick prayer. This is our week to talk about faithful financial practices. And so as we go into that, I thought we would begin on page 827 of the BCP with the prayer for the right use of God's gifts. The Lord be with you. Almighty God, whose loving hand has given us all that we possess, grant us grace that we may honor you with our substance, and remembering the account which we must one day give, may be faithful stewards of your bounty. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. And as we get started today, before we jump into interviewing and hearing from Dr. Rippy, we're going to start with a breakout room. And we do have a record number of attendees, so fantastic. We were wondering when we were jumping into finances, would we have fewer or would we have more people drop in today? We'd like to begin in a small group together. And what I'm going to ask you to do is as you drop in, you're going to have about 8 minutes or so. It's going to go really fast, but introduce yourself to the people around and what your role is with your parish. And I'm going to drop this in the chat here. What is a financial goal or aspiration that you would have, that you would articulate for your parish? It could even be a personal stewardship aspiration if you've been thinking about that. But if you could articulate an aspiration or a goal, what is that one thing? I feel like if we could do this at our parish, if we could get this done or get past this obstacle, things would really open up and change for the better. Does that make sense? Well, welcome back. Welcome back. I'm glad you had a chance to share with each other. We were talking about there was a technological glitch. Apparently my audio came through a breakout room, which is really interesting. We don't know how that happened because I wasn't in the breakout room. But I hope you got a chance to get to know somebody and share some of those goals and aspirations. We're going to jump in with our topic and with our topic specialist, Dr. Jordan Rippy. Jordan, to get us started, would you introduce the committee that you work on and the work that it does in the diocese?
You bet. Thanks for having me. Let me first apologize for my scratchy voice. I have a bit of a cold, which I am steadily overcoming. I am the co-chair, along with the esteemed Linda Bailey from Grace Silver Spring, of the Financial Resources Committee in the Diocese of Washington. So that's different from the Finance Committee. So the Finance Committee is primarily charged with helping churches decide whether they should or could sell a building, more technical issues. But the Financial Resources Committee, the FRC for short, is charged with helping congregations lead successful stewardship campaigns, both in the fall, which is sort of the traditional stewardship time, but then also to renew generosity and stewardship year-round throughout their churches. So our centerpiece offering, which you may be familiar with, this will be our third or fourth year to offer the annual Giving Toolkit. So many of our congregations last year used either the theme, Doing What Love Requires, or pieces and parts of the toolkit from last year.
Awesome. Great. I have seen that, but I didn't know that that was coming from your committee. So exciting. Thank you again for being with us. We just want to jump right in. Let's talk about from your experience and your work with parishes and active with a couple of different dioceses and things. What are some of those must-do practices that a parish needs to have in place to really begin or to grow, to go to the next step in faithful financial practices?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are so many things the congregations could choose to do, but I'm going to talk about 6 of them. And the first one is actually a diocesan requirement, and that is to complete an annual audit. So you may or may not know that the diocesan canons require the completion of an audit by and submission of documentation to the diocese by September 1st of the year following the year under audit. So for us, we're thinking about year 2020, then September 1st would be your date for completion of an audit for the year 2020. Now, I am an auditor. I was an auditor in a life before this life. And what I know is that people, maybe in your work life, you think about audits because maybe you are at a company where you're audited and you think that is terrible. And it's not anything that anybody wants to do. And it's such a slog. And I would really rather the auditors just never come and talk to us. But what I would say is this, a couple of things. Number one, you can learn so much about your congregation and about where the money is going and where maybe it should or shouldn't be going if you can complete an audit. And the diocese gives you 3 options for the completion of an audit. You can hire a certified public accountant to do an audit. That's certainly what many congregations do. It is pretty expensive to do that, however. You can have an audit done by what's called a professional accountant, a PA, who's not a CPA, but is still an accountant. Or, and many congregations don't know this, you can audit by committee. And what you will, in your kind of after workshop recap email, you'll receive a whole basket of goodies in that email. And one of those things is the set of rules or set of guidelines that you would use to audit by committee. And so you as a congregation can choose a number of people, or what even works better is if you have a neighboring congregation and you all sort of switch. And so congregation from St. X would audit congregation St. Y, and then vice versa. You can learn so much about your congregation, about what's happening. If you choose to do this switchover with a different congregation, you can learn a lot about what they're doing that maybe you want to start doing in your congregation. So the completion of an audit, not just as sort of a struggle, but as an opportunity for learning and understanding what's happening, is my first piece.
And the key to that is that the audit's done by someone outside of the parish, right? Which is why you either pay for that professional or you enter into a partnership with a fellow parish to do that.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
that's right. The second thing that I would offer is to think about capital expenditure. I would imagine that many of you are in buildings that you could think of things that probably need to be done to that building. Some probably pretty expensive things that may be coming down the road for you, whether that is a major roof repair or replacement, or an HVAC repair or replacement, or a parking lot repair or resurfacing, or some sort of plumbing or electrical issue. Maybe you have a bathroom or set of bathrooms that need addressing, or maybe you have electrical systems that are sort of on their last leg and just barely holding on, or will be just holding on. So instead of continuing to just hope for the best, right, we call that deferred maintenance. Deferred maintenance really is just hoping that it turns out okay and that we can just hang on through one more hot summer with our HVAC or one more spring with our leaking roof. That's just not going to last forever. And so if we can think proactively about the things that really do need to be done, and then think about how is it that we're going to accomplish that. We have a big expense. Maybe it is that we are going to undertake a capital campaign, or maybe it is that we are going to think about undertaking what doesn't really rise to the level of a capital campaign, but that isn't able to be covered through the operating budget. So a small gifts campaign. So maybe you are thinking of raising something less than about $50,000 because you need to replace the roof or resurface the parking lot. That may feel like a huge number. $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 feels like a huge number right now, and it is. But if we can think about, we can't do it today, but we know that we absolutely are going to have to do it in the next 2 years. So let's get a plan in play and begin to work that plan. What is it that we're going to do to help us get where we need to go in 2 years? So that forecasting piece.
Gotcha. And, I would like to remind everybody, if you want to drop a comment or a question into chat while we're discussing this, please feel free to do that. And we will come back to it at some point. I was thinking, honestly, I was a senior pastor in my last appointment for 8.5 years. We never did an annual audit. Primarily, I think because we didn't have someone who asked us to. So I think that's really important, as part of who we are as a greater community, not just a local parish, but as a greater body of Christ within the diocese. I really like that. I'm intrigued by it.
And I would say too, that people who are giving in your congregation will be really pleased to know that you are taking this faithful step in making sure that you are deploying the resources to which they have been entrusted, that you are now entrusted with using for the building of the kingdom, that you are faithful in using those things, and that congregations can feel good about kind of where that's going. The next thing that I would suggest, I would imagine many of you are on vestries, and you probably receive at your monthly vestry meeting some sort of financial report from your treasurer. And sometimes that report, here's a report that I have from a congregation, and this is how many pages long it is. This is what their vestry gets. That's not helpful, right? Because what you do is you look at this and you say, I don't know what that means. I don't really like numbers. Numbers are sort of scary to me. And so I just am going to hope someone else figures that out and deals with it. And that's fine, except it's not fine because somebody has to figure it out and deal with it. And so what you're going to have in your follow-up is a template, a fillable template that we have that you're certainly welcome to edit as you wish, but a fillable 1-page template that will be a vestry template, what your vestry would receive every month. It's slimmed down to fit on just 1 page and includes just the things that really vestries need to see. Because vestries have this financial fiduciary responsibility to make sure that vestry members know what's going on in the parish as it relates to finances. And if what you're being given is 8 pages of numbers and things, that's not helpful to you. So would encourage you to encourage some of you are treasurers. So I would encourage you as a treasurer to take advantage of this report or slimming down the report that you offer. Or if you're on a vestry, encouraging your treasurer to adopt something that's similar to this that can really let you know what's happening in your congregation. Todd, when you were a senior pastor, how did that work for you? How did you look at money?
So yeah, and it was like this kind of report, and the recap document we send out is going to have links to the toolkit that Dr. Jordan reference, as well as this example document. We were a small congregation, and I know many of us are small, and my congregation, though, was smaller than some of yours, I know. We had a bookkeeper who came in a few hours a week every Monday morning, did a reconciliation, did a deposit preparation, and typically we would spend about 30 minutes going over what bills we could pay. And I would sign those checks to be sent out. And then I would start the week with a stack of checks ready to be signed and sent out for bills as money came in throughout the week. So it was very much, I mean, we often operate in a little bit of a survival mode, right? But at the same time, when you talk about the big capital expenditures, we often had specified giving. We gave people the option to earmark giving towards specific projects and things like that. We even did that for ministries. We do have a couple of questions that popped up, and this might be a good time. Laird asked about a list of congregations interested in peer audits. And I don't know if we have that list or if that's something maybe we could help generate.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that that's something that we'll seek to help generate through the summer, early in the summer, so that congregations who want to enact that for their September 1 deadline have the opportunity to do that.
Great. And I saw, did we cover everything, Laird? Because I know you had your hand up for a moment there.
Yes, we're good for now. And I think a couple of other questions have come up that I was interested in. So I'll just wait and listen to those. Awesome.
Okay. Yeah. So we had a question about the committee you're working with and what they can do with working around congregational debt. Do you have any resources within that committee? Is that sort of within that committee's purview, or would that be a different one?
So it depends on how much debt we're talking about. So we have congregations in the diocese who have really, really substantial debt. Normally related to perhaps the purchase of property or a facility that maybe they don't need anymore or never actually needed to begin with. That's really a finance committee issue about how to seek to kind of work our way out of that. And we work with congregations to help them sort through that. If we have smaller debt, then that is where I think a valuable conversation can be had with the Financial Resources Committee about what sort of campaign, whether that's a large capital campaign or a small gifts campaign, we might enact to work our way out of that. So that might be from an organ, for example. That's a fairly common issue, that we have $50,000 or $25,000 left on the organ. Then we can help you craft a small gifts campaign to work your way out of that smaller debt.
Okay. Yeah, so to the question on that, Beth, I don't think that this is necessarily one of the purviews of that committee. However, the committee is a resource of really intelligent, smart people who've done this a lot. So one of the things in that toolkit and then in the follow-up document is the invitation to contact the committee with the emails and things. So I think that that's an open invitation to throw some things out there, to talk to some people who understand a little bit more of managing the debt and working the debt down. I think would be a great resource, actually, just have that conversation and bring some more brain power to it. Linnell had a question. Go ahead.
Let me speak briefly to that point. If you have substantial debt and you are thinking about wanting to, let's say, refinance the debt, I would so encourage you to have a conversation with the Finance Committee about that particular thing. There's a congregation in the diocese who a number of years ago got themselves into some financial derivative transactions when they were refinancing debt, which is a terrible idea if you aren't real clear about what you're doing. And that can get you into some real sticky situations, and that's a problem. And so there are many, I'm not an attorney, but there are many smart attorneys on the Finance Committee who can help you think about that. So I would very much encourage you to be really careful as you're thinking about kind of big debt things, if you're thinking to refinance that.
Yeah, thank you. That's sort of the flip side. I was kind of chuckling because in my previous pastorate, I didn't have anybody requiring the annual audit. So there's a feeling of, whoo, that's just one less thing I got to do. But at the same time, I didn't have that brain power, that group of people to whom I could turn and say, let's talk about this debt outside of the immediate stress of carrying the debt. Like everybody sitting around the table in my local church leadership, they all felt that anxiety and stress. And so it's tough for us sometimes to think outside of it. That's great. Thank you. Linnell asked, is there a template for the financial committee showing what they really need to look at monthly? If a parish has a financial director, is it common for them to report to the financial committee on a monthly basis? And maybe you could say a little bit more about that reporting.
Yeah, Linnell. So yes, it is common for a financial director to report to the Finance Committee and for those people to work together. So the chair of the Finance Committee, I think you're from St. Mark's, Capitol Hill, the chair of the Finance Committee and the financial director need to be working closely together as you progress through your fiscal year. And is there a template? We don't have a template, but that's something that we could add to the toolkit that's specifically for the finance committee, because we want the finance committee to be doing a bit of a deeper dive than the vestry is doing. So we have our one-page vestry report, but then we might pull back and look at something for specifically the finance committee. One other thing I would like to speak to as it relates to just the nitty-gritty of finances, Todd, you mentioned having opportunity to give to a particular project. I would encourage you as congregations to think very carefully about how many options you have for people in their giving. So there is a congregation in the diocese who has done a really good job of slimming down the number of accounts that they hold. There is a congregation with which I've worked recently who has more than 60 different accounts that you could give to. You could give to the flowers, you could give to the 9 o'clock music, you could give to the 11 o'clock music, you could get, just a million little things. So then what happens is that you have a ton of tiny accounts that you just wind up sitting on the shelf. You have to keep looking at them. So I would very much encourage you to really slim down, having no more than just the operating budget and perhaps some bigger items, maybe 4 or 5 things that people can give to, so that you don't wind up with a lot of tiny little accounts that you can't really do anything with.
That's good. Thank you. Yeah, because we want to be ethical about our behavior. And if people give money and we allow them to give money towards a specific thing, we need to use it for that thing. So yeah, definitely. The situation I had been in was there was none of that. There was only the operating budget. And we had some people who were really passionate about certain things. So it was liberating to open it up for that, but it can get out of hand if you don't control it. We talked about the annual audit. We talked about capital expenditure forecasting, the vestry report. What's next?
Let me speak a little bit to online giving. So that ties into the account choices. Many congregations are now offering online giving as a result of the COVID pandemic. If your congregation is not yet doing that, I would very much encourage you. In the follow-up email, you'll see something that was prepared by Peter Turner, who's the Diocesan Director of IT, that helps you make just a few quick decisions about which method you might, or which provider you might want to use for processing online payments and how to get that set up. I would encourage you to do that.
Yeah, we were talking about it. I wonder if anybody in the COVID year has not set up online payment or really kind of shifted some things over to make room for online giving. Pre-pandemic, in my experience, it really opened up giving for younger generations who typically don't carry a checkbook. We were talking about, I write 1 check a month now, which is my rent check every month. Otherwise, everything I pay is online. And I found as a pastor that younger generations not only gave consistently when they had the online option, but they would actually do their makeup giving on par or more than other generations when they could do it online, because they could look back and get an immediate statement there of what they've given and what they've missed. And yeah, it really opened up a lot of opportunity for them to participate.
Now, in the time when we return to NC public worship, I know that sometimes congregations are concerned about online giving in an in-seat context, because during the passing of the plate, well, I don't get to participate in that because I gave online, but I want to have something to do to participate. And I truthfully want the people around me to know that I'm giving and I'm not just like shirking my responsibility to my congregation. And so what you can do is create just a little laminated card. It looks like this, a little laminated card that will include a template in the follow-up that you stick in your pew back seat. You reuse it every single Sunday. And it just says, I completed my pledge online, or I gave online. So it gives somebody the act. Right? We are a liturgical denomination. We are liturgical congregations. And so it gives people the opportunity to use their bodies to participate in the worship experience that is around them. And I would encourage you, if you haven't done that yet, that you would think of doing that in your post-COVID environment to give people the opportunity to participate.
Definitely. Thank you. We have a couple of questions. Layer put a question in. He asked, are there organizations that should be represented on the finance committee, stewardship committee etc.?
That's a great question. So oftentimes congregations just have a challenging time getting people to agree to do things. And so if you have someone on the stewardship committee, it would be excellent for them to be part of the finance committee. They may not be willing to do that because it, in their minds, will take a lot of time and may indeed actually in your congregation take a lot of time. But it would be very helpful for the chair of the stewardship committee or the person, if there isn't a committee, there is a person who's responsible for the annual appeal, to be in communication with the finance committee. Because what happens is this, and some of you are going to say, you're right, this happens because it happened to me, is that the finance committee will build a budget that is completely out of reach and then say to the stewardship chair, I need you to make this work, like go find this money. And that doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. And so we need to have some communication before in the budget building process about what's realistic.
I like that. Thank you. And in the world of unconventional options, first, I love the idea of the laminate card put in the pew that can be reused. It gives that level of participation and things, and takes some of the onus off people being seen not participating. In my pastorate, we did away with passing the plate after about a year. And we never saw any dip in giving. We had a box at the back. And in fact, we set up a table within the sanctuary that was our giving and receiving table. So there was some signage with the table. If you didn't own a copy of the scriptures and wanted one, there were Bibles there. You were free to take one. There were often other things which we had done or used in worship. If we had leftovers, they would be back there, little odds and ends and trinkets and things and beads. But then that's where our giving box was as well. And so many people had moved over to online giving. And then you had your check writers for your pledgers. Sunday offering really was just small cash gifts and the occasional guest that wrote a check. Things like that. Sunday morning offerings were really usually pretty small because so much had gone off into pledge giving and online giving. But we really enjoyed that box. And I would say in 7.5 years that I ran the church with the box back there, we only had one gentleman who had trouble keeping his hand out of that cash box. And the congregation was great about helping him deal with that temptation. But in unconventional options, we found it really interesting and freeing to use the box like that. Deanie mentioned that they started off with the PayPal platform. That's what we used as well, and have since added Cash App, which is actually getting more traffic. Yeah, Cash App is super easy for that quick giving, right? Deanie, do you want to say something about that? How is Cash App, is that primarily just for your normal giving? Are people invited to use that, or is that like a one-off thing? Are y'all using that for small gifts and ideas and projects?
I wasn't expecting that you would put me on the spot. That's a great question, but to really give you the best answer, my treasurer is on the call, Laird Papsgana. He's our treasurer at St. John's, Mount Rainier. So I'll let him answer that because he was very instrumental in setting all of that up.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
And
way to deflect the ball.
Yes, perfect deflection, Dini. And the answer to the question is yes, 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 yes. Yeah. We have those who are most comfortable with it are using it for everything, literally. And of course, there are people in the parish who are still a lot more comfortable mailing in their donations and actually sending in cash or coming to the office with cash, which we encourage. But most people are moving over to online giving, especially since we added Cash App, because apparently Cash App is a lot more accessible to people than PayPal or, for that matter, Zelle.
Yeah. When you mention Cash App, you're talking Gen Z language now.
Yeah.
Because like my kids, they don't use PayPal. My kids don't use Venmo or Zelle, but they all have Cash App. And it's definitely a great option. And that is a great agility for a finance committee to consider for a church to have multiple platforms, like Dr. Jordan said, and then tapping into some of what people know. Every Gen Zer has got Cash App on their phone. Android or iPhone, it doesn't matter. And they've all used it to send funds back and forth. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that. We do have a lot of check writers, still. Kathy mentioned that, which is definitely true. Jordan mentioned Venmo. If you have a lot of people using Bank of America, their system is called Zelle, which is actually nice. I'm not promoting Bank of America. They're a juggernaut of the capitalistic system and all that good stuff, but we've been with Bank of America for years, and I can pay my lawn company through Zelle. So it's just one more thing. It gets easier to do. I would have happily paid them some other way, but they were either, they wanted a paper check or they wanted Zelle. All right, back to you, Jordan. What else would you want to throw out there?
Yeah, one other thing I'd like to speak to is just the importance of account reconciliation. Someone on your finance committee, or perhaps it's someone on the vestry who's responsible for doing account reconciliations every month. So you may have a church account that has a checkbook, and so you would do a bank reconciliation with your checkbook. You may only do digital transactions, and you may not have a checkbook. You may have a credit card, a church credit card. Making sure that somebody has eyes on that in a consistent way every month is really important. Not for a few reasons. Certainly the most obvious reason is because fraud happens. Okay, it happens in churches. I have a little spiel that I would be very glad to come and give to your vestry, which I'll speak to that in a moment, about fraud in congregations, not in the Diocese of Washington, but just all around. And is there fraud probably happening in some congregation in the Diocese of Washington? Yes, probably so, because it's happening all over the place. And so that's a way to help kind of mitigate some of that fraud risk, but also it again gives you more information about where is our money going. So you may, for example, have subscriptions to all manner of things that you don't need anymore. You just didn't really know that you had them. They're just pulling that $12.99 or $25.99 out of your bank account every month, and you've forgotten about it, or it was set up by someone 10 years ago and that someone isn't in your congregation anymore. And that lets you know, oh, what is this thing coming out of on my credit card statement every month, coming out of the church's pocket that you don't need. And so that's a way to kind of have hands and eyes on that. Now, about vestry, I have a bit of a dog and pony show. So Father Henry McQueen at St. John's Olney, I don't know if someone from St. John's is here, but Father Henry McQueen from St. John's Olney and I used to serve on the Financial Resources Committee together. He was the chair before I was the chair. And several months ago, he wrote me an email and said, Jordan, would you come and give a 20-minute talk to the vestry on Zoom for accounting for non-accountants? And I said, you bet I will. And so I did, and it was fun. It was easy. It was 20 minutes for your vestry to hear just like, what is a balance sheet? What is a statement of cash flows? What is an income statement, or we often call it a statement of profit and loss? What are these things? How do I look at them so that we don't have I'm looking at a sheet of numbers and then just glaze over because I don't want to have to think about that, because numbers are scary and someone else should worry about that. We don't need to be afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of. We don't need to be afraid. So if you want me to come to your vestry meeting for 20 minutes, I will be very glad to repeat that particular dog and pony show for your vestry so that you all can feel a little bit more confident in what you're doing. In addition to that, I tack on a little bit of conversation about fraud in congregations, again, not in the Diocese of Washington, and some very simple and straightforward internal controls that you can set up that will help mitigate some of that fraud risk.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, that reconciliations is so important because we do, even as institutions, with parishes, it tends to be licensing agreements and things which operate either monthly or annually. I found that PayPal made a lot of that easier. I could set PayPal up as the payment system for a lot of the online licensing and registrations and subscriptions. But then I could also go there to simply see the list of subscriptions and cancel them easily. But I can't tell you personally how many times I've been caught off guard by, I just paid an entire year of Hulu monthly memberships and not opened the app, or Crunchyroll, or some other thing on that I signed on to on my iPhone. For sure. And money is scary to talk about. I know we talked about for sure beginning to change the culture around that a little bit and bring spirituality back into our financial discussions. Make it part of worship again and our spiritual life.
Yeah, Todd, thanks for that. That's something that the Financial Resources Committee is really invested in, particularly with the annual giving toolkit that we offer each year, which if this is news to you that such a thing existed, then I'm glad you now know. And also in your follow-up email, you're going to see a list of the summer offerings that the Financial Resources Committee gives. And essentially you can come on Zoom and hang out a little bit with Linda Bailey and I, and we will walk you through all of the resources. It's a very robust toolkit. We got the idea from the esteemed Diocese of Virginia, and have built it out every year. And it makes stewardship so much easier. And it also gives you the opportunity to not just think about stewardship in September and October, be shy about it, be a little bit embarrassed about it, not want to talk about it, but how can we make this part of our kind of holistic lives of faith and spirituality? Because money is a tool, is a resource that we have to honor God with our lives and with our worship. And so if that would be helpful for your congregation, I would very much encourage you. It takes a lot of the sting out of having to conduct a stewardship campaign, because all that kind of hard work of coming up with a theme, coming up with graphics, coming up with letters and postcards and all those things, it's already done. You just have to delete the red text and type in your name. I mean, it's really that easy. So we would encourage you to come this summer and take advantage of learning about that.
Fantastic. Thank you. We do have a couple comments. Mary pointed out that Zelle is broader than Bank of America. I forget that. It is in Capital One and some of the other big banks in Wells Fargo. Jennifer mentioned that school does have some things coming up this summer and offers lots of things for that, for finances. The recap document that's going to go out also includes, I was noticing that we have a page on the EDAL website with our Unstuck Masterclasses available to parishes within our diocese. And one of them is a financial health session. And lots of links to things from the Episcopal Church Foundation. They offer lots of resources, including a book for building some of these practices out. And that's really great. We were talking about when we did our giving campaigns, our pledging campaigns, we had some reconciliation with families throughout the year on that. I crafted a letter that just went out a couple times a year along the way to say, hey, love you. Thank you so much for everything you bring to the congregation. And thank you so much for your pledge. For your information, the bookkeeper is going to insert a number at the bottom of this letter, which is what we've accounted so far against your pledge. For your records, I don't see it, only the bookkeeper sees it. So thank you for all you're doing. And if there is a discrepancy, if we're missing something, be sure and let us know. And so that way the family is reminded throughout the year that, oh, I did make this pledge. And they've got that relationship with the bookkeeper that they can, keep up with that. And we had a couple of people contact us and say, hey, I switched over to online payments. I need that attributed to my pledge amount. So it helped us stay on top of things and reconcile all that. Awesome. We are at 12:51. We're going to take a quick break back into breakout rooms. And the question is sort of, what is the biggie? What is the one thing that you're kind of picking up on from our time, from everything that Dr. Jordan has brought to us? I'm dropping it in chat of all we've talked about. Is there a biggie for your parish? What stands out as the practice that you can really take into your context? We talked about annual audit, reconciliations, forecasting capital expenditures, that usable vestry report, online giving, and making finances a spiritual practice. We're good. All right. Well, welcome back, everybody. I would like to just invite Dr. Rippy to give us her last word. What do you really want to end on today?
Yeah, thank you. So I would offer to you the Annual Giving Toolkit as one of the best resources that the diocese can give to you that makes life really easy. The diocese has many, many things, but this is one of them. I didn't come up with this idea, so that's why I can say it's great. This is, as I said, our third or fourth year to offer this. This will be updated with a brand new set of themes and graphics and materials for 2021 in June. But this is our 2020 toolkit, and this is available on the website. You'll have a link to this in your follow-up email. And it shows you all, we have a video kind of explaining the toolkit. We have a sermon from Bishop Marianne that you can drop in for Stewardship Sunday if you would like to. We have letters. We have all manner of other resources that are available to you, and also includes a link to the Financial Resources Committee to just email the committee directly. So if this is new to you, I would very much encourage you to pass this along to whoever it is that will be responsible for doing your annual appeal this year, as a resource that can make life much, much easier. And you don't have to use everything. If you don't love the theme, you can just keep the materials, the letters and those kinds of things, but just change up the theme. Absolutely fine. You're welcome to slice and dice however you wish, but it really is in a box and ready for you to use.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jordan. Two quick housekeeping things before we go. The bishop could not be with us today, but she did ask me to give her best to everyone. She's been enjoying the lunch hours as well. And, finances, money, currency is not the only resource, and not the only, it's not the most important resource that parishes have. Our parishes are filled with amazing, gifted, talented people with passion and energy. And next week when we gather for lunch, we're going to be talking about inspiring and capable leadership. And that's lay and ordained. That's equipping and raising up leaders and launching them out into the work that God has given us to do. So look forward to that next week with you. And to end with a word of prayer, this is our prayer for the parish. Almighty and ever-living God, ruler of all things in heaven and earth, hear our prayers for all our parish families. Strengthen the faithful, arouse the careless, restore the penitent. Grant us all things necessary for our common life, and bring us all to be of one heart and mind within your holy church, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you all. Bless you. Thank you, Dr. Jordan, again for everything today, and really a great time. Take care, everyone.